The night was quiet on the colony world of Eris Minor, the kind of quiet that made people forget danger existed at all. Lights glowed softly along the palace walls. Guards walked their usual rounds. No one thought anything was wrong. High above the planet, hidden in the dark between stars, a Vornac warship drifted without lights. Inside, 12 assassins stood in a circle, listening to their commander speak. "The royal twins must die tonight," said the commander, a tall Vornac named Threll. His skin was pale gray, his eyes sharp and cold. "Their bloodline is dangerous. If they grow up, they could unite the human colonies against us. We cannot allow that." The 12 assassins nodded. They were the best the Vornac Empire had. Each one had killed kings, generals, and spies across a dozen worlds. They wore black armor that bent light around them, making them almost invisible in shadow. They carried blades sharper than any human weapon, and weapons that could burn through steel walls. "The palace defenses are weak," said one assassin, a woman named Skarn. "Human guards, human locks, this will be easy." Threll smiled. "Easy, in and out before sunrise, no one will even know we were there." What none of them knew was that someone on Eris Minor had been waiting for this exact moment for a very long time. His name was Daniel Reyes, and he was the palace janitor. Daniel was not impressive to look at. He was a man in his 40s with gray starting to show at his temples. He wore a plain gray uniform and carried a mop and a bucket everywhere he went. He spoke quietly. He never argued. He always said good morning to the guards and good night to the cooks. People in the palace barely noticed him. That was exactly how he wanted it. Every day, Daniel cleaned the same halls. He emptied the same trash bins. He fixed the same broken light in the east corridor that never seemed to stay fixed. No one asked him why it kept breaking. No one asked him why he always seemed to know which halls would be empty at which hours. No one asked him anything at all. That night, Daniel was mopping the floor outside the royal nursery when he heard a faint sound from his earpiece, hidden under his collar. It was a soft beep, almost too quiet to notice unless you were listening for it. He stopped mopping. He looked at the ceiling at a small black sensor disguised as a smoke detector. Only he knew it was there. Only he knew what it meant. Something had entered the planet's atmosphere. Something not authorized. Something trying very hard not to be seen. Daniel set down his mop calmly, like a man finishing a shift, not like a man preparing for war. He walked to a maintenance closet at the end of the hall, the kind that no one ever looked at twice. Inside were cleaning supplies, mop buckets, and a shelf of spare light bulbs. He moved the shelf aside. Behind it was a second door, hidden in the wall, that led down into a narrow passage no one in the palace knew existed except him. Down below, hidden in his own private room beneath the palace, Daniel sat at a small desk with several screens. The walls were lined with maps of the palace, every hallway, every door, every air vent. Some lines on the maps were drawn in red. Those were the changes Daniel himself had made over the past 3 years. A door that locked from the wrong side. A floor panel that could drop a person into a sealed room. A gas line that could be turned on remotely from this very desk. He had built all of this slowly, one small change at a time, never rushing, never drawing attention. 3 years of patience, just in case a day like this ever came. He pulled up a live feed from the palace's outer sensors. 12 heat signatures, faint but real, were descending toward the east side of the grounds. Whoever they were skilled. Human sensors barely caught them. Daniel touched a comm switch. "This is Reyes," he said quietly. "Activate lockdown echo. Royal Guard Captain, do not engage unknown intruders directly. Let them come to you." The Royal Guard Captain on the other end, a young officer named Marcus Holt, frowned at his screen. "Reyes, you're the janitor. Why are you giving orders?" "Because I've been preparing for this exact night for 3 years," Daniel said. "Trust me, Captain. Move the twins to the secondary nursery. Now." There was a pause. Marcus had always thought the quiet janitor was a strange man, always fixing things that didn't need fixing, always walking halls that led nowhere important. But something in Daniel's voice now was different. Calm, but absolutely certain. "Moving them now," Marcus said. Above the palace, the 12 Vornac assassins landed without a sound. Threll raised a clawed hand, and his team split into 3 groups of 4, moving toward different palace entrances. They expected resistance from guards with simple rifles. They expected cameras they could avoid easily. They did not expect anything more. The first group reached a side door near the kitchens. Skarn cut the lock with a small blade of focused heat, and the door slid open silently. Too silently, in fact. The hinges had been oiled recently. Skarn didn't notice. Inside the palace, lights dimmed slightly as Daniel adjusted the power flow from his hidden room. Just enough to make the intruders feel like they were succeeding, like the palace truly was as weak as they believed. The 12 assassins moved deeper into the building, confident, fast, deadly. They had done this 100 times before on 100 different worlds. They had never failed. What they didn't know was that Daniel Reyes had studied Vornac assassination tactics for years. He knew how they moved, how they thought, how they always trusted their own skill a little too much. He had built this palace's secret defenses specifically for an enemy like this. In his hidden room, Daniel watched their heat signatures spread out on his screen. 12 red dots, moving through hallways he knew better than his own hands. He allowed himself a small, quiet breath. "Come on, then," he murmured to the empty room. "Let's see how good you really are." Above him, in the east corridor, one of the 4 assassins from Skarn's group stepped onto a section of floor that looked completely normal. It had always looked completely normal. That was the point. The floor held his weight for 1 second. Then it didn't. To be continued. The assassin fell into darkness before he could even make a sound. The floor panel closed above him with a soft click, sealing him inside a narrow chamber built into the foundation of the palace. The room filled with a thin gas, odorless and quick. Within seconds, he was unconscious. He would wake up hours later, locked and harmless, with no memory of how he got there. His 3 companions did not notice he was gone. They had spread out too far, too fast, each one trusting the others to handle their own corner of the building. That mistake would cost them more than they knew. In his hidden room beneath the palace, Daniel watched one of the 12 red dots on his screen disappear. He did not smile. He did not celebrate. He simply moved his focus to the next group, the way a man might check off one task on a long list before starting the next. Skarn, leading the kitchen group, reached a long hallway that led toward the nursery wing. She paused, sniffing the air the way Vornac soldiers were trained to do, searching for any trace of fear or sweat that might mean a guard was hiding nearby. She smelled nothing. The hallway was empty and silent. "Clear," she said into her comm. No one answered. She frowned, checking the channel again. Strange. The other 3 members of her group should have responded. She moved forward anyway, confident in her own skill even if her team had gone quiet. She believed it was simply bad signal, nothing more. Vornac assassins did not believe in bad luck. They believed in good plans and strong weapons. Tonight, she would learn that belief could be wrong. Threll, the commander, led his own group toward the east wing, where palace records showed the royal nursery was located. He moved with practiced calm, his blade ready, his eyes scanning every shadow. He had killed kings in their own bedrooms before. A pair of human toddlers would be nothing. His group reached the nursery door. It was unlocked, almost as if waiting for them. Threll's eyes narrowed. An unlocked door in a high-security palace. That should have worried him more than it did. Inside, the nursery was empty. 2 small cribs sat untouched, blankets still slightly wrinkled, a stuffed toy lying on the floor, but no twins. "They've been moved," Threll said quietly. He was not surprised. Royal families often had secondary safe rooms. He had expected this. Find the secondary nursery, quickly. What Threll did not know was that the secondary nursery did not exist as a real location. It existed only as a false trail. A name in old palace records that Daniel had planted there himself. years ago, in case anyone with the wrong intentions ever searched for it. As Threll's group moved through the east hallway, following the false trail, Daniel adjusted a few lights remotely from his hidden room, dimming one corridor and brightening another, gently guiding the assassins exactly where he wanted them to go without them realizing they were being led at all. Meanwhile, Marcus Holt, the young Royal Guard captain, stood in a real secondary safe room far from the nursery, holding open a comm channel to Daniel. The twins, a boy and a girl barely 2 years old, slept peacefully in his arms, unaware that 12 killers had come for them. "Rays, talk to me," Marcus whispered. "How many are left?" 11, Daniel answered calmly. "One is secured. The rest are spreading out just like I expected." "You expected this?" Marcus asked, disbelief in his voice. "You're a janitor." "I clean floors," Daniel said. "That doesn't mean I don't pay attention to what walks on them." Marcus didn't know what to say to that. He simply held the twins tighter and waited. Back in the East Wing, Skarn finally reached what records called the secondary nursery. It was a small storage room filled with old furniture and dust. No twins, no guards, nothing. She felt the first real flicker of doubt. "This is wrong," she said into her comm, more to herself than anyone else. Still no answer from her team. She turned to leave the storage room and found the door had locked behind her. She was not worried, not yet. Vornac armor was strong enough to cut through most locks. She raised her blade and pressed it against the door's edge, ready to slice through the frame. The moment her blade touched the metal, a small device hidden in the doorframe activated. A burst of focused sound, too low for human ears but painful for Vornac hearing, filled the small room. Skarn staggered, her vision blurring, her balance gone. She dropped to her knees, disoriented, unable to fight back as the same thin gas that had taken her companion in the floor trap now filled this room too. In his hidden chamber, Daniel watched another red dot vanish from his screen. 2 down, 10 remained. Threll's group, still following the false trail, reached a long stretch of hallway lined with old portraits of past rulers. It was a beautiful hallway, the kind built for impressing visitors, not for hiding danger. Threll's instincts, sharp after decades of missions, suddenly told him something was wrong. The hallway was too quiet, too clean, too perfectly normal. "Hold," he said, raising a hand. His 3 remaining companions stopped behind him. He studied the floor, the walls, the portraits. Nothing seemed out of place. And yet, "This palace is not what it seems," Threll said slowly. "Someone built this place to fool us." One of his men laughed quietly. "It's a backwater colony commander who would build traps into a children's palace." Threll did not laugh. He had survived this long by trusting his instincts even when they made no sense. "Someone who knew we were coming," he said. "Stay alert." They moved forward more carefully now, checking each step, each wall, each shadow. It slowed them down, which was exactly what Daniel wanted. In the hidden room below, Daniel watched Threll's group move with new caution and allowed himself a small nod of respect. This commander was smarter than the others. He would need to be handled differently. Daniel reached for a second screen, one that controlled the palace's old water systems, originally installed for fire safety decades ago and long forgotten by everyone except him. He began routing the system toward the hallway where Threll's group now stood. Marcus's voice came through the comm again, tense. "Rays, 4 of them are getting close to the real safe room's outer hallway. What do we do?" "Nothing," Daniel said. "Let them come to me." "To you? You're alone down there." "I'm never alone," Daniel said. "I built this palace's bones. Every wall here listens to me." Marcus didn't fully understand what that meant, but something about Daniel's voice made him believe it anyway. Threll's group reached the end of the portrait hallway, where it split into 2 paths. One path led toward an old library. The other led toward a stairwell going down, deeper into the palace. Threll stared at both paths for a long moment. Something about the stairwell pulled at his instincts, a faint feeling of danger he couldn't explain. "Down," he said finally, pointing toward the stairwell. The deepest, most hidden room is always where royalty truly hides. His men nodded, trusting their commander's experience. They started down the stairs, deeper into the palace, exactly where Daniel had been quietly waiting for them all along. To be continued, the stairwell was narrow and dimly lit, the kind of place most people would never think twice about. Threll led his 3 remaining men downward, one careful step at a time, his senses stretched as far as they could go. Something about this place felt wrong in a way he had never experienced on any other mission. The walls were too clean. The air was too still. Even the dust seemed arranged, as if someone had decided exactly where it should sit. At the bottom of the stairs, a long corridor stretched ahead, lit by a single row of soft lights. Old pipes ran along the ceiling, painted the same gray as the walls so they would blend in and go unnoticed. Threll did not know that those pipes were the very same water system Daniel had been quietly preparing above. "This does not feel like a children's palace," one of Threll's men muttered. "It feels like a trap built for soldiers." "Then we will be the soldiers who survive it," Threll said, though even his confidence was beginning to crack at the edges. They moved forward deeper into the corridor. Doors lined both sides, each one closed, each one silent. Threll's instincts screamed at him to turn back, but turning back was not something Vornac commanders did. Retreat meant failure, and failure meant disgrace. In his hidden room, Daniel watched the 4 remaining heat signatures move steadily toward him. He had expected most of the assassins to be stopped along the way by the palace's hidden traps. 8 were already gone, sealed away in small chambers throughout the building, harmless and unconscious. Only Threll's group remained, and Daniel had always known the commander would be the hardest to fool. "Captain Holt," Daniel said quietly into his comm, "keep the twins exactly where they are. Do not move them again. The commander is close to me now. I need to handle this myself." "Raise, there's 4 of them and 1 of you," Marcus said, his voice tight with worry. "Let me send guards down there." "No," Daniel said firmly. "Your guards would only die trying to help. This was never about fighting them with strength. It's about making sure they never had a chance to begin with." Marcus did not understand fully, but he had learned over the last hour to trust the quiet janitor's calm voice more than his own fear. Threll's group reached the end of the corridor, where a single door stood slightly open, light spilling out from the room beyond. It looked almost like an invitation. Threll stopped his men with a raised hand. "This is wrong," he said. "An open door waiting for us. Someone wants us to walk through it." "Then we don't," one of his men said. "We find another way." "There is no other way," Threll said grimly. "Look around you. Every other door we've passed has been locked tight. This one is open on purpose. Whoever built this place wants us right here, right now." He thought for a long moment, his mind racing through every mission he had ever survived. Then he made a decision that surprised even his own men. "We go in together," Threll said. "If this is a trap, then we face it as one unit, not split apart like the others clearly were." His men nodded, gripping their weapons tightly. Together they stepped through the open door. Inside was a simple room, square and plain, with gray walls and a single desk in the center. Behind the desk sat a man in a plain gray uniform, calmly folding a cleaning rag, as if he had been expecting visitors for tea rather than 4 armed killers. Threll's eyes narrowed. "Who are you?" "I clean the floors here," Daniel said simply, setting the rag down. "Among other things." One of Threll's men let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "A janitor? You expect us to believe a janitor built whatever has been happening to us tonight?" "I don't expect you to believe anything," Daniel said. "I only expect you to notice that 8 of your companions are no longer with you." The room went very quiet. Threll studied Daniel carefully, searching for any sign of weapons, any sign of hidden allies. He saw none. Just a calm, ordinary-looking man sitting behind a plain desk. "You're lying," Threll said slowly. "No single human built defenses capable of stopping Vornac assassins." I didn't build defenses to stop assassins, Daniel said. I built defenses to stop overconfidence. Your people walked into this palace assuming it would be easy. That assumption is what defeated them, not me. Threll's claws tightened around his blade. Then let us see if the same assumption will defeat you. He moved fast, faster than any human could react, his blade slicing through the air toward Daniel's chest. Daniel did not move like a frightened man. He shifted his weight slightly, just enough, and the blade passed through empty air where his chest had been a moment before. He caught Threll's wrist with one hand, calm and precise, and used the assassin's own momentum to send him stumbling past the desk. The other 3 assassins moved at once, surrounding Daniel from different angles, but the room itself seemed to work against them. One stepped backward and triggered a section of floor that released a sudden burst of bright light, blinding him for several crucial seconds. Another reached toward Daniel and found his arm caught in a thin metal restraint that shot up from a hidden slot in the floor, holding him in place. The third assassin, smarter than his companions, stopped moving entirely, realizing too late that every part of this room had been designed as a weapon long before he ever stepped inside it. Threll regained his footing and stared at Daniel with new understanding, something like respect mixing with his anger. You planned every single step we would take, he said quietly. Not just tonight. You planned this for the moment we entered this palace, perhaps long before that. 3 years, Daniel said. I've had 3 years to prepare for a night exactly like this one. Why? Threll demanded. Why would a simple janitor spend 3 years preparing to fight an empire? Daniel's eyes were calm, but something deeper than calm lived behind them. Because someone has to, he said. Because the twins upstairs didn't choose to be born into danger, and someone needs to make sure that danger never reaches them. Threll lowered his blade slightly, though his men remained trapped and struggling around him. For the first time since landing on this planet, true uncertainty crossed his face. You're not just a janitor. No, Daniel agreed quietly. I haven't been just a janitor for a very long time. To be continued. Threll stood very still, his blade lowered but not put away, staring at the calm man behind the desk. Around him, 2 of his men remained trapped, one blinded by light, one held fast by the metal restraint that had risen from the floor. Only the third assassin, the smart one who had stopped moving, remained free, watching everything with sharp, careful eyes. Tell me who you really are, Threll said. A name, a rank, something that explains all of this. My name is Daniel Reyes, Daniel said. That part has always been true. The rest of it doesn't matter right now. It matters to me, Threll said. I have hunted kings and generals across a dozen worlds. I know what trained killers look like. I know what trained strategists look like. You move like both, and yet you carry a mop through these halls every day. Daniel allowed himself the smallest of smiles. The mop is useful. People stop noticing you very quickly when you're holding one. They see gray uniforms and tired eyes, and they decide there's nothing more to learn. That decision is the most dangerous mistake anyone can make. And the twins? Threll asked. Why does an empire's target matter so much to one man that he spends years preparing to defend them? Because somebody has to care, Daniel said simply. Kings and generals plan wars. Armies fight them. But it's always the quiet ones, the ones nobody pays attention to, who end up holding the line when everyone else has already decided the outcome is certain. Threll's grip tightened on his blade again, frustration mixing with something close to respect. You speak like a soldier. I speak like a man who has seen what happens when good people assume someone else will handle the danger, Daniel said. I decided a long time ago that I would not be one of those people. The smart assassin, still free and watching closely, finally spoke. Commander, this conversation accomplishes nothing. Kill him and let us find the twins ourselves. Threll did not move immediately. Something about Daniel's calm refused to fit into any pattern he recognized. Killers usually showed fear, anger, or pride when cornered. Daniel showed none of these. He simply waited, like a man who already knew exactly how this moment would end. "Fine," Threll said finally, raising his blade again. "If you won't explain yourself, then you'll fall like the others." He lunged forward, faster than before, his blade aimed precisely at Daniel's throat. This time, Daniel did not simply dodge. He stepped sideways and brought his arm up in a smooth, practiced motion, redirecting the blade's path with barely any effort at all. The movement was small, economical, the kind of motion that came only from years of real training, not luck. Threll's eyes widened as his own weapon was turned aside, and Daniel's free hand struck a precise point on his arm. The limb went numb instantly, the blade slipping from suddenly useless fingers. "You're a marrow-trained fighter," Threll said, shock clear in his voice now. "That technique, I've only seen it used by the old human black operations units. Those programs were shut down generations ago." "Shut down publicly," Daniel said. "Some things continue quietly, long after the official records say they've ended." The free assassin moved then, rushing forward to help his commander. Daniel turned smoothly, catching the assassin's incoming strike on his forearm and redirecting it into the restrained assassin beside him, creating a tangle of limbs and confusion. In the chaos, Daniel reached toward the desk and pressed a small switch. The lights in the room dimmed for just a moment, and a section of the wall behind Threll slid open, revealing a narrow space filled with soft blue light. Before Threll could react, the floor beneath him tilted just slightly, just enough to throw his balance off, and he stumbled backward into the hidden space. The wall slid shut behind him, sealing him inside a chamber too small to move freely in, too solid to break through quickly. The free assassin, now alone and facing Daniel directly, finally understood the truth his commander had only begun to grasp. "You never needed an army," he said quietly. "You built this entire palace into one." "I built it into a lesson," Daniel said. "Your empire sent 12 of its best to kill 2 children. I wanted to make sure that lesson was clear enough to remember." The assassin lunged anyway, perhaps from pride, perhaps from desperation. Daniel met the strike calmly, deflecting it once, twice, 3 times, each motion smaller and more efficient than the last, until the assassin's weapon clattered to the floor, and a precise strike to the side of his neck sent him collapsing, unconscious, beside his trapped companions. The room fell silent, except for the quiet electronic hum of Daniel's hidden systems. Daniel walked to the sealed wall where Threll remained trapped and pressed his palm against a small panel beside it. A narrow slot opened, just wide enough for sound to pass through. "Can you hear me, Commander?" Daniel asked. There was a pause, then Threll's voice came through, tight with controlled anger. "I hear you." "I'm going to let you go," Daniel said. Silence followed this for several seconds. "Why?" Threll finally asked. "You've beaten 11 of my finest. Killing me changes nothing for you militarily, but it would remove a witness. Most strategists would choose silence." "I'm not interested in silence," Daniel said. "I want your empire to understand exactly what happened here tonight. Not rumors, not guesses. The truth from someone who lived through it." "And what truth is that?" Threll asked. "That you sent 12 of your best soldiers against 2 sleeping children," Daniel said. "And you lost, not because humanity has bigger weapons or stronger armies, but because you assumed quiet people are weak people. That assumption will keep costing you, again and again, until your empire learns better." Another long silence stretched between them. "You could have killed me the moment I stepped into this room," Threll said. "Why didn't you?" "Because dead men can't deliver messages," Daniel said. "And this message needs to reach exactly the people who sent you here." Far above, in the quiet safe room where Marcus Holt still held the sleeping twins, the young captain listened to Daniel's voice come through his earpiece, calm and unshaken, as though the last hour had been nothing more than another ordinary night of mopping floors. "It's over, Captain," Daniel said. "All 12 are accounted for. The twins are safe." Marcus let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. 12 elite Vornac assassins, he he said quietly, almost to himself. Stopped by a janitor. Stopped by patients, Daniel corrected gently. The mop just happened to come with me. In his sealed chamber, Threll sat in the dim blue light, alone with his thoughts, already beginning to understand that the report he would carry back to his empire would change very little about how his superiors viewed humanity, at least not at first. But somewhere, in some quiet corner of Vornac command, someone would eventually listen. Someone always did eventually, when the cost of not listening grew too high to ignore. To be continued. Morning came to Aris Minor the way it always did, with soft golden light spreading slowly across the palace gardens. Birds sang in the trees outside the royal nursery. Servants moved through the halls preparing breakfast, completely unaware of what had happened in the building around them only hours before. To anyone watching, it looked like any other quiet day on a small colony world. Daniel Reyes walked through the lower corridors with his mop and bucket, exactly as he did every morning. His uniform was clean. His face showed no sign of exhaustion, though he had not slept at all that night. He paused at the same broken light in the east corridor that never seemed to stay fixed, examined it for a moment, and continued walking, as if today were no different from any other. In the secondary safe room, Marcus Holt finally allowed himself to rest, sitting in a chair beside the twins' cribs, watching them sleep peacefully. He had spent the entire night listening to Daniel's calm voice guide 11 dangerous killers into traps one by one, and he still hadn't fully processed what he had witnessed. When the sun was fully up, Daniel returned to his hidden room beneath the palace one final time. 11 sealed chambers throughout the building held 11 unconscious Vornac assassins, each one secured, each one harmless. Only Threll remained awake, sitting quietly in his small chamber, waiting. Daniel opened the panel separating them. "It's time," he said simply. Threll stood, his earlier anger now replaced with something quieter, more thoughtful. "You're truly letting me go," he said. It wasn't quite a question anymore. "I am," Daniel said, "but not without a few conditions." "Conditions," Threll repeated. "You're in a position to make demands of the Vornac Empire." "I'm in a position to make demands of you," Daniel said. "Whether your empire listens is up to them." He led Threll up through the hidden passage, into the lower halls of the palace, and finally to a small landing pad outside the eastern wall, where a single Vornac shuttle, the kind used for emergency escape, sat waiting. Daniel had prepared it himself overnight, quietly making sure Threll would have a way home. "Your 11 companions will remain here," Daniel said. "They will be treated fairly, given food and care, until your empire sends someone to collect them through proper channels. No harm will come to them as long as your empire doesn't try anything foolish in the meantime." Threll studied Daniel carefully. "And if we do try something foolish, then you'll learn that what happened last night wasn't the limit of what this palace can do," Daniel said. "It was simply the smallest response I was willing to give." Threll was quiet for a long moment, looking at this ordinary-seeming man who had defeated 12 of the Empire's finest soldiers without raising his voice once. "What message do you want me to carry back?" "Tell your superiors the truth," Daniel said. "Tell them you were defeated, not by armies, not by superior weapons, but by patience and preparation. Tell them that the easiest enemy to underestimate is the one who looks like he has nothing to offer. Tell them humanity has more of those than they realize, scattered across every colony, every ship, every quiet job no one thinks to question." "They won't believe it," Threll said. "Not at first." "They don't need to believe it right away," Daniel said. "They only need to remember it the next time they consider sending soldiers after children." Threll moved toward the shuttle, then paused, turning back one final time. "Why didn't you kill me, truthfully? Not the answer about messages and witnesses, the real reason." Daniel considered the question carefully before answering. "Because killing you would have proven nothing except that I could kill," he said. "Anyone with a strong enough weapon can kill, Commander. I wanted to prove something different. I wanted to prove that strength isn't always about how many people you can defeat. Sometimes it's about how much restraint you can show when defeating them would be easy. Threll nodded slowly, something like understanding settling over his sharp features. A strange philosophy for a soldier. I'm not a soldier anymore, Daniel said. I'm a janitor. The philosophy is the same either way. Some things are worth cleaning up properly, not just destroying. Threll boarded the shuttle without another word. As it lifted off, rising silently into the morning sky, Daniel stood watching until it disappeared completely from view. Then he turned, picked up his mop and bucket from where he had left them by the door, and walked back into the palace. Inside, Marcus met him in the main hallway, the twins now awake and being cared for by their nursemaids, safe and completely unaware of how close they had come to danger. Marcus studied Daniel for a long moment, searching for the right words. "The Empire's assassins," Marcus said. "All 12 of them. You really did this alone." "I had 3 years to prepare," Daniel said. "That's not really alone, that's just patience." "Who taught you to fight like that?" Marcus asked. "Who taught you to build traps like that into an entire palace?" Daniel adjusted his grip on the mop, glancing down the hallway where servants moved about their normal morning tasks, completely unaware of everything that had happened beneath their feet during the night. "That's a longer story," he said. "Maybe one day I'll tell it. For now, the twins are safe, and that's what matters." Marcus nodded slowly, understanding that some questions wouldn't be answered today, perhaps not for a long time. What happens now, with the 11 assassins still locked in the lower levels? "We hold them," Daniel said. "Fairly but firmly. When the Vornac Empire sends an official request through proper diplomatic channels, we'll discuss their return. Until then, they stay exactly where they are. And if the Empire decides to send more soldiers instead of diplomats..." Daniel allowed himself a small, quiet smile. "Then they'll learn the same lesson the first 12 learned. Some lessons need repeating before they truly sink in." Marcus watched Daniel walk away down the hallway, mop in hand, heading toward the east corridor where that same light fixture waited to be fixed yet again. To anyone passing by, he looked exactly like what he had always appeared to be. A quiet, unremarkable man doing a quiet, unremarkable job. But Marcus knew better now. Everyone in the palace would eventually know better, though Daniel would likely continue insisting otherwise, would likely continue carrying his mop through these halls every single day as though nothing had changed at all. Word of what happened that night never spread far beyond the palace walls. The official report, carefully written by Marcus himself under Daniel's quiet guidance, described a foiled assassination attempt stopped by advanced security measures and alert palace staff. No mention of janitors. No mention of hidden rooms beneath the floors. No mention of a single man who had turned an entire palace into a weapon through nothing but patience and careful planning. Far away, aboard a Vornac vessel returning home, Commander Threll sat in silence, replaying the events of that night again and again in his mind. He thought about the calm voice that had guided his soldiers into trap after trap. He thought about the precise, practiced movements that had disarmed him without unnecessary violence. He thought about the simple gray uniform and the mop that had seemed so harmless, right up until the moment it wasn't. When he finally reached Vornac Command and delivered his report, his superiors listened with growing disbelief, then growing unease. Some dismissed his account entirely, certain no simple colony world could defeat 12 trained assassins. Others, wiser and more cautious, began quietly reconsidering their assumptions about humanity's small, scattered colonies. Somewhere in that vast empire, in some quiet office far from any battlefield, a single question began to spread among the more thoughtful officials. How many other quiet, unremarkable humans were out there, doing quiet, unremarkable jobs? Waiting patiently for a moment just like this one. Back on Aris Minor, Daniel Reyes finished mopping the east corridor, fixed the stubborn light fixture one more time, and continued his rounds exactly as he always had, carrying his mop and bucket through halls that held more secrets than anyone walking them would ever guess. The twins grew up safely, never knowing how close danger had once come, never knowing the quiet janitor who emptied their trash bins and fixed their broken lights had once, on a single ordinary night, stood between them and an empire. And somewhere beneath the palace, hidden walls and quiet traps remained ready, patient as ever, waiting for whatever might come next.